Chop, the original Guillotine League podcast. Everything you need to know to avoid the chopping block. Chop is brought to you by GuillotineLeagues.com. Now, your host, Paul Charchian.
Hello and welcome to Chop, the Guillotine Leagues podcast. My co-host today, a man whose modeling goes so deep, he's been nicknamed the Karlie Kloss of fantasy experts. It's Matthew Freedman. Hey, buddy. Welcome back.
Hey, I amazingly have no idea what that is in reference to, but I'm sure you will enlighten me.
If you saw a picture of Karlie Kloss, you would know. You would know.
Okay.
And by the way, you have a better, sexier beard than Karlie Kloss.
I would hope so, but I would hope so in regards to like sort of whatever the comparison was. Like I probably don't have a better, sexier beard than you do. Yours, you have like that distinguished gray in it, like that silver fox in it. I aspire to that one day. Right now, I just have the sort of like, are you a ginger or are you not a ginger type of beard?
I love it. And do you have an official answer for that?
No one has ever asked me that except for the man in the mirror, you know?
Right. Karlie Kloss, by the way, has referenced fantasy football teams in the past. And when I tried to figure out what her favorite NFL team was via a variety of different ways, Google searching, AI, funny, right when Patrick Mahomes showed up, she became a Chiefs fan. Front runner.
Well, I mean,
Karlie
look,
Kloss.
I've done some Googling in the past 30 seconds and I've quickly become a Karlie Kloss fan.
So yeah, it's easy, right?
Yeah. So I can't blame
Exactly.
her for any front running or bandwagon jumping.
All right. Before we get into our main topic today, Freedman, I need to use you as my on-air therapist because I'm losing sleep over this. And I'm hoping at the end of this story, you tell me it's going to be okay.
Okay.
I've done probably 100 Guillotine League drafts since starting GuillotineLeagues.com 6 years ago. And I've never done this and had this happen. So I'm in the middle, and it's ongoing right now, in a Fantasy Life Guillotine League draft with 8 hours per pick. So it's a slow draft. And I had pick 8, and Justin Jefferson fell to me, and I took him there in the first round. 4 rounds later, I'm super busy, and I'm starting to get close on the clock. So I set my queue with a bunch of players. I turned on auto draft so I wouldn't leave everybody hanging for 8 hours because I knew I was going to be busy. And one of the guys that I loaded into the system was TJ Hawkinson into my queue. Now, I already got one Viking, but I really like Hawkinson this year. And Addison's going to go miss those 3 games. I see a ton of targets coming. And I'm like, I always advise people and myself, don't spend a couple of early picks on somebody from the same team. Too much risk. But I'm like, all right, well, if it goes that way, it goes that way. And sure enough, it breaks exactly that way. Auto draft ends up taking TJ Hawkinson for me. Here's where it goes horribly wrong. I forgot to toggle auto draft off after that pick. I had already loaded a bunch of people into my queue from before the Hawkinson pick, and I got picked again. And it gave me Jordan Mason. 3 of my top 6 players are on the same team. Not what I want. And I'm supposed to be showing the way to everybody at Fantasy Life, like what to do and what not to do. Freedman, I have 3 Vikings. They have a week 6 bye.
I don't think
what am I doing here?
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters in a couple of ways. One, in the sort of like existential sense. I don't think it matters in that, like, you know, there are bigger problems in life. Don't lose sleep over this. But in terms of the fantasy game, I would say you're not playing to try to make the playoffs or to finish in the middle. You are playing to try to win. And there's a case to be made that maybe people are too low on the Vikings offense in general, you know? And if that's the case, you could end up with 3 guys who you picked relatively early, but who still all outperform their draft positions. That is possible. In which case, that would help you get to the all-important championship game in week 17. So I wouldn't worry about it too much because you can also, with the picks that you have after this, you can game for your bye. you can sort of plan for this so that you have a tight end, another tight end
Right.
who can fill
Right.
in. Jordan Mason, as great as he is, he's probably not going to be a true difference making guy early in the season. So I think it would be fine. And honestly, maybe the football gods, the fantasy gods will look down on you kindly, and maybe it actually works out for you in a out leverage type of way.
Yeah. And you know what it's really going to do? And one of the beauties of the Guillotine League format is you can recover from draft day mistakes so fast because you can just spend your way out of the mistake.
Yeah.
It means I'm going to have to spend before week 6 more than I want to. And that's going to make, that's going to set up things a little differently than I want them to, but I can spend my way out of it. Worst case scenario, if nobody else in my draft is able to help me out of that week 6 bye with 3 Vikings. Thank you for the encouragement. I hope you're right. Not taking anybody else in week 6 with a week 6 bye. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
Freedman, today's show is about conflict. It's about disagreement. This is a Dan Kaufman episode. Now, Dan, most of you don't know Dan. Some of you do. He's a regular listener. He's one of the brain wizards at Fantasy Life and a regular Chop listener. And Dan called me up last week and he said, Chop's great. You guys agree way too much. Everybody's all on the same page. I was like, you know what? You're right. Let's do a whole episode around disagreements, players that we see differently on. And so our premise here, you and I are going to battle over 5 players that we have pretty significant ranking differences using my Guillotine Leagues rankings, your standard rankings, and you can apply your guillotine judgment to this as well, Freedman. In a lot of cases, these aren't players who one of us dislikes. It's mostly that we dislike the ADP and we're not, we wouldn't take them where the other guy would take that player. We'll dive into those 5 players in just a second. First, let me mention this. 3 ways to play Guillotine Leagues at guillotineleagues.com. Free public leagues you can play with your friends. Free private leagues that you can play. Free private leagues with your friends. Free public leagues with strangers. Or cash leagues with prizes if you're in an available state. guillotineleagues.com. Philosophically, we've set up this whole episode for us to disagree. Freedman, I want to know your thoughts on whether or not you believe there is a consensus hive mind of fantasy experts who over the course of the offseason end up pushing all of their rankings into one homogenous set of rankings where people don't feel like they can have real meaningful differences of opinion, where thought leaders like yourself end up affecting many other people and other experts in the industry. What do you think of the fantasy expert hive mind? Is it real?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question and used the word homogenous, because that was the word that immediately came into my mind when you started asking the question, even before you said that word. Yeah, I think as the season ends, people can have various opinions about how the next year is going to go. But then you get best ball drafts that start, and you get early ADP, and then you get players trading teams, and then people talking about their thoughts on the projection for how that guy on a new team is going to perform. And then you have the draft, and then you have people talking about that. And then you have all of these months from draft day to week 1 where people are drafting, producing rankings, looking at other people's rankings, talking about all of this. So yes, I would say there ends up being an echo chamber, but at the same time, I think on the one hand, it's good in that it's a positive for people to be able to see what other people are thinking. And then it also creates opportunities for people who are independently minded or even contrarian to be able to capitalize when maybe the market or thought leaders push things a little bit too far. And so I think that's a little bit of what today's episode is about, us kind of looking at, the boundaries, like not necessarily like, am I wrong? Are you right on this? But like, what's the perspective behind the different rankings that we have?
What we can say every year is as good as any experts are with their rankings, and you're excellent at it, proven repeatedly excellent at it. We're all going to be really, really wrong at the end of the day, right? And it's just the way it works because the game is weird and there's so many variables that you can't possibly account for. So you would think that there would be astronomical variance for people because the outcome is going to be astronomically variant. But there really isn't. And this is a case where we'll get to talk about 5 different players that we have different views on. And I think it's extremely healthy.
Yeah. And I'll say one quick thing about like the difference of views. There could be a number of things behind the differences. And I think in most cases, it will boil down to like one of 3 things. So one, it might be just sort of like the way that we view the offense that these players are in. Another way would be like the way that we think of the player's role within that offense and how much usage he's going to get. And then the third thing might be the way that we think about the player's ceilings or floors and kind of the way that we think about risk in general. And then the way that we kind of think about the odds of a player hitting his ceiling or the odds of a player hitting his floor or how stable or high his floor is. So I think those are the 3 main ways in which where we differ, the difference could be explained by those things.
And I know you take all of that into account with all the modeling that you do with your projections and your rankings. Speaking of rankings, my Guillotine specific rankings are available at fantasylife.com. As far as I know, we're the only place and I'm the only person generating Guillotine specific rankings. Freedman, if listeners and viewers want to save 20% off a premium subscription to Fantasy Life, what should they do?
Well, I mean, if I were a gentleman, I would say that they could use your promo code, but I'm definitely not a gentleman. So they should use the promo code Freedman for 20% off on the Fantasy Life package.
I love it. The following 5 disagreements are brought to you by a company that we can agree is super cool called GoPuff. We'll tell you a little bit more about them in just a minute. Let's begin, Freedman, with our very first player. We are going to agree to disagree on Courtland Sutton. I am going to let you go first in every one of these, regardless of whether you've got the pro or anti side, being the gentleman. I'm going to let you go first. Tell people why you're not as optimistic on Courtland Sutton as I am.
Yeah, so you have him, I believe, around wide receiver 17 or so.
That's
I think
correct.
I have him at wide receiver 33. And I'll say
that's a big delta.
It is a massive delta. I'm pretty pessimistic. Part of it is that so on the positive side, kind of like building the case for Courtland Sutton. If you look at the utilization report that we have, and I think that's one of the best research tools in the industry, you can look at sort of air yards, you can look at different metrics for Courtland Sutton, and you can see he had a really great year last year, just in terms of like the role that he had within that Broncos passing attack. The thing is, I just don't think Courtland Sutton is that good of a receiver. And I think he's going to experience some pretty significant regression. So like he's up there with names like AJ Brown and Malik Neighbors and, like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. He's just not in that caliber of player. So what happens when he drops down from like top 5, top 8 usage to more like number 18, number 20 usage? I think he's going to precipitously fall in his production. And then another part of this is I don't think Bo Nix is all that good for the players around him. Now, Bo Nix had a really good rookie year, especially in terms of fantasy, but some of that was because of the rushing production, and that doesn't really help the pass catchers on his team. If you look at the passing from Bo Nix, last year he was number 19 in composite EPA and completion percentage over expectation, number 25 in adjusted yards per attempt. Those are acceptable, mediocre numbers for a rookie quarterback, and it's possible that he could get better in his second season. That's certainly within the range of outcomes.
Yeah, but I think it's likely.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. And I admit that. The thing is, I will say I'm a little bit of a pessimist in that Bo Nix played 61 games. Actually, let me rephrase that. 61 starts in college. That's an NCAA record. He was 24 years old, a 2-school veteran. I think he was kind of ahead of the curve when he entered the NFL. And because of that, I don't think he's going to have the same second year leap that a lot of other quarterbacks have. So I'm not going to say Nix is maxed out already. I'm just going to say, I don't think we see quite the jump in the offense that other people might expect. And so if I think Courtland Sutton isn't going to have quite the same role, I think Marvin Mims is going to take a step forward within that offense and compete a little bit more. They added Evan Ingram, who I also think is going to take away some targets. So if I think Sutton's role within the offense is going to reduce a little bit, and if I think the offense doesn't take as big of a step forward as other people might think, that explains the drop off. And then I'll just say there's something about the style of Courtland Sutton's game. I don't think he's all that good of a separator. And I think the risk reward spectrum for him is skewed to the bad. So if he outperforms his ADP, I don't think he's going to do it by much. But if he underperforms, I think it could look like him falling off of the age cliff, basically the way that Allen Robinson did a few years ago. So it's more of a sort of like, I'm trying to protect against the bad type of scenario. And I am fine with letting someone else draft Courtland Sutton, because if he does well, I don't think he does all that well. And if he does badly, I think it could be really bad.
I will be the guy that's taking him well before you. I like Courtland Sutton. Anytime I'm debating between receivers in Guillotine, specific to this format, Freedman, I always take the guy who's his team's go-to alpha receiver. In Guillotine, we care a lot about target share because those targets create, and that volume creates consistency, because receivers got the ball in his hand. Something good can happen. He's caught a pass. I've got 1 PPR point. Sutton's alpha status is just locked in Denver. Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin and even Evan Ingram, I just don't think those guys are going to eat into what we saw last year. Once Bo Nix got cooking last season from week 6 forward, Sutton averaged almost 9 targets a game and almost 6 catches per game. And you alluded to this earlier, Freedman, from week 6 forward, Sutton finished as PPR wide receiver 12 and 11th in utilization score. That is with the rookie quarterback, no running game, a battered offensive line. All those things can get healthier in this offense. Bo Nix can get better. The running game should be better with Harvey and Dobbins, and the offensive line obviously at least rolls into the season healthy. That big physical frame. You mentioned Courtland Sutton, not a great separator. That's true. But what he is great at, contested catches. That big body of his. He gets used at the goal line a lot. Only Mike Evans averaged more end zone targets per game than Sutton did after week 6 of last year. So I'm on Sutton as an alpha receiver that I think is going to give me a higher floor than a lot of players that you might take instead, especially non-number 1 receivers on their own team. You, the listener, the viewer, you get to decide who won. I don't have a live feedback mechanism here, but keep running score. Did Freeman win? Did Charch win? Let's go to our next player. Tyreek Hill. You and I, again, gigantic delta. I've got him wide receiver 22. You've got him wide receiver 9. Make your case for Tyreek Hill.
So it's funny, in a lot of situations, I tend to be the wet blanket where I'm lower than other people on a guy. Here, I'm the opposite. I'm the raging fire on which you need to be the wet blanket. But I will say Tyreek Hill, I still think of him as a really great player. And last year, in a lot of leagues, he was a top 3 pick, sometimes the number 1 wide receiver selected. And now he's going in round 3 in a lot of leagues. And I know that in the Guillotine League, we want a guy who has a higher floor, especially if we're spending a premium pick on him. And I will freely admit, Tyreek Hill is not the high floor guy. He has a very wide range of outcomes. And so I can understand the perspective of being a little more pessimistic on Tyreek, especially after what we saw last year. But the dude also has a really high floor. And if I think that in round 2, round 3, I can get a guy who just last year was a consensus top 3 pick, and who in the 2 seasons prior to last year was a first team All-Pro, then I'm going to be pretty tempted to do it, especially when I can sort of explain away his poor performance last year. By the way, poor performance, he still had 1,000 yards total from scrimmage, but poor performance last year. He had a wrist injury that plagued him the entire year, and he was missing his starting quarterback for 6 games. Just want to say, he still might be Tyreek Hill. On top of that, the 3 seasons, including last year, the 3 seasons that he's had with the Dolphins, 9.6 yards per target. The mark for his career, 9.5 yards per target. Those are elite numbers. And again, you can contextualize what happened last year. Tua was out. He had a wrist injury. I think people in general are too low on that offense. And what Tyreek did in his first 2 seasons, over 3,500 yards from scrimmage, 21 touchdowns in total in those 2 seasons. I don't know if he reaches those heights again, but I think he can return to being a Pro Bowler, and I'm getting him in the 3rd round. So I know we want high floor guys, but if in the 3rd round, I have a shot to hit a grand slam and get a guy who just last year was a consensus top 3 player in fantasy, the way people were drafting him, I'm going to do it. So it's a big swing, but I feel comfortable doing it, knowing that if I'm right in the 3rd round, I got a guy who, when I'm playing in the championship in week 17, a guy who belongs in my starting lineup and is a top 8 wide receiver in the league.
In Guillotine Leagues, big swings, you can do it, but you can only have a couple of big swings on your whole roster because if they all go bad, you're done. And this isn't the guy I'm going to take my big swing on. Tyreek Hill at age 31. I'd rather get out a year too early than a year too late in this format specifically, Freedman. The play last year, it fell off a cliff in a lot of different ways. I'm going to give you some data behind it. I think it takes nards of steel to take him in the 3rd round right now. Let's address the Tua excuse outright. Yes, losing Tua for 5 games was a contributing factor for sure. But let's look at the 12 games that Tyreek Hill did play with Tua. He only had 2 top 10 finishes in those 12 games. And here's the really big part for Guillotine. Tyreek Hill had 5 finishes at wide receiver 30 or worse in those 12 games. And last season, despite playing all 17 games, 6-year lows in receptions, yards, and explosive plays. That's what we're here for with Tyreek Hill, right? We're always going to remember Tyreek Hill are the long bombs, whether they were from Patrick Mahomes or from Tua in Miami. But the explosive plays dried up too. Freedman, Hill's yards after catch drooped to just 3.6. That's 35th among wide receivers. I'm nervous about this. Last year, he posted single-digit PPR points in 7 different games. Single-digit PPR points is how you lose in a Guillotine League. 7 different games with single-digit PPR. I can't do it. I can't do it, and I can't make a rationalization for Tyreek Hill to bounce back at age 31, Freedman.
The one thing I will say is I feel like some of that is baked into his ADP. It was absolutely killer. His performance last year was absolutely killer if you drafted him in the top 3. And you had to draft him in the top 3 to get him.
Right.
Now he's a little more de-risked because you're getting him in the 3rd round.
Fair point. We'll let the listeners and the viewers make the decision on who won that one. Producer Matt LaMarca says, I'm up 1-0 through one player. He hasn't chimed in on Tyreek Hill yet. Let's move to our 3rd player. Caleb Wiliiams, you've got him at quarterback 10. This is going to be your Pollyanna-ish ranking. I've got quarterback 21. Again, giant delta for Caleb Wiliiams. Tell me what you like about him.
Charch, I'm going to say the reality of the situation is we are probably both wrong. You are probably too low on him, and I'm probably too high.
Yes.
But what I will say is that in Guillotine Leagues, and we've talked about this before, quarterback is the most replaceable position.
Yes.
And I think once we get out of, let's say, like the top 5, top 6 quarterbacks, at that point, I'm kind of looking for one of 2 things. Someone who can get me through the first half of the season and kind of hold the position down so that whenever one of those elite guys does come available, I have a chance to bid on him at that point, or someone who can really outperform their draft position and maybe end up being a top 6 quarterback so that I don't really have to think too much about the position for the rest of the year. And I think Caleb Wiliiams has both of those possibilities within his range of outcomes. He's one of my favorite late round quarterbacks, along with Drake May and JJ McCarthy. Now, I have Williams projected as a low end QB1, but I think his upside is significantly higher than that because entering his 2nd season, he naturally could improve. The number 1 pick, he was in a terrible offensive situation. And I would just say environment in general last year. And I think all of that should be improved. So he could be better in his 2nd season. And then the offensive environment around him has significantly improved. They've added some weapons there, but then also the main thing, head coach Ben Johnson, who I think is an unquestioned upgrade at play caller. And then they've strengthened, or at least rebuilt, but probably strengthened the interior of their offensive line with the additions of left guard Joe Thuney, an all-pro, center Drew Dahlman, and right guard Jonah Jackson, who knows the system from his time with Ben Johnson in Detroit. So I think all of that is a boon for Caleb Wiliiams. And in targeting the bench or late round players, I just want guys who either have high ceilings or high floors. And I think Williams has a ceiling that is worth stashing. So I know I'm being aggressive in ranking him in the top 10, but because I think he's a guy who really has like a top 6 quarterback possibility, I'm going to be a little more aggressive in going to get him.
All right. That's your case for Caleb Wiliiams. And I think this is all going to come together for Caleb Wiliiams and Ben Johnson. I don't know when, and when will it be consistent, Freedman? I mean, that's what I'm here for, is a quarterback that's not going to get me chopped. I want regular, consistent fantasy production. Is it week 1? Is it week 5? Is it Halloween? Is it Thanksgiving? Is it Christmas? That's the part that worries me, is how long is it going to take? And I've been influenced a little bit by our college football expert and Chop co-host, Thor Nystrom. If he were here right now, he would be telling us Caleb Wiliiams could have a rocky learning curve, because he said this before, because he's always been an off-script producer and doing his best work out of structure. And Ben Johnson runs a highly structured offense, and that this is just going to take some reps for Caleb Wiliiams to become a consistent producer. And this is a very Guillotine-specific answer here. You know, the issues I've got look like this. Last year, didn't love what I saw. And at one point Caleb Wiliiams in the middle of the season went a month without scoring a touchdown. Do you know how hard it is to in this league for a quarterback to go 1 month without any scoring? Really tough, but he managed to do it last year. Hopefully things will be better this year, of course. The Bears running game could be really bad. DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Kyle Monangai. This might be a really bad unit. You mentioned the improved offensive line, and I'll grant you that, except at the most important position on the offensive line, left tackle is still a big question with Braxton Jones there, who has looked bad so far in training camp. Bears fans are pulling their hair out over that. And then there's this last thing I'll mention that is a concern for Caleb Wiliiams in this format. The early season schedule. We always talk about how we care so much about September because your team's going to be different by October. It'll be different in November. We really care about just staying alive. Week 1 against Minnesota's defense is a problem. And then even week 2, Detroit's numbers don't look good, but with everybody healthy in that secondary and the addition of DJ Reed, that could be tricky. And then there's this. And another reason that I'm not drafting Caleb Wiliiams. Week 5 bye. I hate the early buys, even though, to your point, and you're 100% right, Freedman, quarterback's the most replaceable position, but that means week 5, I've got to find a replacement and I got to spend some money.
Okay. All of that is a really good point. What I will say is that I'm playing for a championship. If I'm not going to win a championship, I don't care if I get chopped in week 2 or week 5.
Oh, I do.
Like I'm playing to try to win a championship. And if I think that, and maybe it's just a question of Caleb Wiliiams and the way that he fits in that offense in general. But if I think that Caleb Wiliiams is a guy who is worthy of being the number 1 pick, and I know that he's now with one of the best play callers in the league, and I know that they've improved their offense, and they have stashed offensive playmakers around him. Say whatever you want about DeAndre Swift, but he's a really good pass catcher out of the backfield. And then they have all of the other pass catchers there.
Yep.
I think the environment really could not be all that much better for Caleb Wiliiams. So if I think that in year 2, he's going to take a big step forward, I just expect that if he's going to be good at the back half of the year, he's probably going to be good enough in the front half of the year. And that's what I'm banking on if I'm drafting him as high as my ranking suggests.
All right, let's move to our 4th of 5 players we've agreed to disagree on, and that is rookie Ashton Jeanty. I've got him all the way up at running back 2. You have got him at running back 7. I am rarely the guy saying draft a rookie onto your Guillotine team. It has got to be a unique situation for me. This is that situation. Let's hear about why you're a little more bullish. No, bearish. You're bearish on Ashton Jeanty, Freedman.
So I wrote an article on the site with all the guys that are on my do not draft list, quote unquote, do not draft list. Yeah. And Ashton Jeanty is on the list. I want to contextualize it. I don't think that he's going to have a bad season, but I still have a kind of surprisingly low projection for him. Now, let me contextualize this. I think the Raiders offense is going to flow through him, and that is projected, or that's reflected in the projection that I have for him. 227 carries, 70 targets. Like, that's a locked in 3-down role. He's going to be I think, one of the most used running backs in the league. And that's why I have him ranked in the top 10, right? He's going to have a really high floor. And for the guillotine format, that is really attractive. And he's young. So presumably he has less likelihood to break down. That's also really nice. And because we haven't seen him play in the NFL, he kind of has the upside of the unknown, right? And we saw him, I mean, obviously a fantastic player in college, selected high in the NFL draft. Like, I can see the theoretical ceiling for him, and I'm projecting him to have a really high floor. But here's the thing. If I'm spending a first round pick on a guy, I also want him to have the ceiling to match the floor. Like, I want him to have a shot to be the number one guy at his position. And I don't see that in Jeanty. And it's not because of him. It's because of his offense. I think that Raiders offense is really going to underwhelm. If we look at the number of games that they have in the sports betting win market, they're projected to win like 4.5, 5.5 games. Like, I think this is going to be a really underwhelming offense. And I think that is going to cap his ceiling and make it difficult for him to outperform his ADP in a big way. And again, high floor, but if I'm drafting a guy in round 1, I want him to have the ceiling of being the number one guy at his position. And I just do not see that with Ashton Jeanty.
You know, it's an interesting way to frame it up. We talk so much about high floors, and it is so important in guillotine. But boy, in the first round, you do want a player that also gives you the high ceiling, so that when you get the dud game from somebody else on your roster, that player's ceiling makes up for that other dud game that you have to absorb, that 3-point game that you have to absorb. But I think Jeanty's going to give us both. I'll try to make my case and see if it's as compelling as yours. Now, last 2 Tuesdays ago, Brian Johnson and I broke down the 10 rookies that are going top 10 in ADP, and which of the 10 that we felt like we would trust to start in a guillotine league. And there were only 3. Ashton Jeanty was one of the 3, of course, an astounding college career, which you already alluded to. I think, and in the minds of many, the best college running back prospects in Saquon Barkley, who was good right out of the chute for the Giants in his rookie year. 3 down back, which you mentioned, he's going to amazing receiving skills. He's going to give you a PPR floor, which is really critical, but also I think that does give him a high ceiling as well when he puts together that 1 touchdown, 100-yard rushing game, and then he chips in 5 catches, 50 yards. That's, that really starts to add up. The overall offense is a concern, and it's a fair point, Freedman, but Geno Smith's going to be way better than Aiden O'Connell. He's going to bring competency to the quarterback position. He's not going to end drives at his own 20. Geno Smith's going to get the ball over the 50, into the red zone, at the stripe, and we're going to see touchdowns from Ashton Jeanty. And let me give you some stats that I'm sure you have not heard, Freedman. And at this time of year, it's hard to get fresh stats and fresh takes on anybody. I wanted to refresh my memory on what Pete Carroll does inside the 5 historically, and what Chip Kelly did inside the 5. So I went to Pete Carroll's last year in Seattle. He had the 7th highest run rate inside the 5-yard line in his last year in Seattle. And then I went to Chip Kelly's last year coaching, which was a decade ago in Philadelphia. Number 1 run rate inside the 5, 86% run rate inside the 5 for Chip Kelly. Last year, he was head coach. So I think we're going to get a lot of Ashton Jeanty carries at the stripe.
I can buy that. I will say that Pete Carroll, famous for not throwing inside the 5 in one very key moment, and then
correct.
And then Chip Kelly, the Philadelphia years, that's true. The 49ers, his 1 year with the 49ers, I don't know how run heavy he was then, but like, in all fairness, I don't know how often. That was a really bad team. I don't know if they even got inside the 5 all that often.
That could be.
And he's, in college, he's evolved a lot since then, but I think your point is saying when they get inside the 5, I think it's Ashton Jeanty time. I just think that this offense is not going to have that many touchdowns in general. And so it's hard for me to project a lot of touchdowns for Ashton Jeanty when I'm kind of down on the offense.
Okay, our 5th and final player upon whom we've agreed to disagree, and another play with a pretty big delta, and I'm ready to lose this one. My heart wants to lose this. I'll tell you, my heart's not in my side, but I'm going to try to make my case anyway. Freedman, you've got Aaron Jones ranked running back 25. I've got him at 38. Tell me why you believe at running back 25, that means he's a starter, 18-team guillotine leagues, right? That means he is a starting running back on a lot of leagues. Make your case for Aaron Jones?
So when we were talking about Ashton Jeanty, you mentioned the really high target floor that he has. And I think about that with Aaron Jones as well. I wrote a piece on Fantasy Life about the running backs projected for 50 plus targets. Aaron Jones on that list. I think he has a really high floor because of those targets. And then also just because of the offense that he's in general. And Charch, we opened the show talking about the Vikings offense.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty underappreciated offense given what we've seen out of Kevin O'Connell and his ability to coach up quarterbacks. So I think that offense is going to be pretty good, which means Aaron Jones, I think he should have multiple opportunities as a receiver in each game, and like maybe more opportunities on the goal line than people expect. And I think that's the main thing that people are kind of holding against him right now. The idea that he wasn't all that good on the goal line last year.
Yes.
And Jordan Mason is going to get a lot of the goal line work. And that
Correct.
is possible. But I think even if that's the case, Aaron Jones still has a really high ceiling because of his production history. And then also the fact that Jordan Mason, he seems talented, but he's also really unproven. Like what we've seen out of Jordan Mason was an 8-game stretch last year where he looked really good in a high functioning offense. And I think that, again, he's going to be in a high functioning offense with the Vikings, but Aaron Jones, we have seen him be a good player for over half a decade at this point. So again, I think he's going to lose some goal line work, but he's averaged almost 1,300 yards and 9.5 touchdowns from scrimmage over the last 7 seasons. Like he's just a good player. And I think he's got a pretty high floor because of the offense and the targets, even with Mason getting goal line carries. I still think Aaron Jones is going to have enough production to where we can trust him week in and week out. And then also the offensive line has improved year over year with the additions left guard Donovan Jackson in the draft, and then getting from Indianapolis, the interior duo of center right Kelly and right guard Will Freeze. I think those 3 guys should really improve the offensive line. So Aaron Jones, with the opportunities he gets, he might be even more efficient on a per opportunity basis. So I am in on Aaron Jones this year.
All right, I'm going to make my case against Aaron Jones. I'm going to start with this. Aaron Jones told me he's not going to get goal line carries, so I'm using him as my source. And if it turns out that we're wrong, you can blame him and not me. He is a good dude. I hate throwing any shade at Aaron Jones. He is a great guy. And I am optimistic he's going to catch enough passes to be a PPR helper. And I wouldn't be surprised if you can limp along for a month with Aaron Jones. But I'm going to make my case against him here. It begins with the Jordan Mason part, which you've already illuminated. I don't believe that there's going to be touchdowns headed for Aaron Jones. If you asked me to put a touchdown total on a season, I'd say 4, 5. And last year, as the bell cow for the Vikings with no competition, Aaron Jones averaged 3 catches, 24 receiving yards. It's not terrible, but that's 5.4 PPR points. And if this year he's going to be in roughly a 50-50 timeshare, it feels like those same 3 catches and 24 yards is the maximum that he can get when he's only on the field half as many snaps. There's a real scenario as well where Jordan Mason, at their respective ages and at this point in their careers, that Jordan Mason's just a far better back. And this backfield shifts from 50-50 to 60-40 and 70-30 over the course of time in favor of Mason, leaving Jones only to get third down work. At the end of the day, with Aaron Jones, if I'm getting Austin Eckler, Freedman, I'd like to pay Austin Eckler's ADP. If that's what I'm looking at here, a third down receiving back who mixes in like 30 rushing yards a game, then I'd rather pay the Austin Eckler ADP, which is running back 38, where I've got Aaron Jones and not running back 25.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned the Austin Eckler point, because I was thinking of the way you were describing him. I was thinking like, that sounds a lot like Austin Eckler. By the way, Austin Eckler, proud investor in fantasy life. Love Austin Eckler. I think he's undervalued. I will say with Aaron Jones, I think it's a projection to say that he's going to have a drastic reduction in workload. And that's fine. That might be the case. Like there is a time in guys' careers where they change, right? Like they're not as efficient. They're not able to punch in the ball from the goal line the way that they previously could. I mean, Aaron Jones at one point point, 19 touchdowns in NFL, 19 touchdowns. That's what he had in 2019. He's probably not that guy anymore. So at some point, his role in the offense is going to change. But Jordan Mason is also such a projection that it's hard to say that we're going to take a lot of the opportunities away from the guy who's had 1,300 yards from scrimmage over the past 7 years, and we're going to give him to a guy who's been productive for half a season. Like, that's a pretty big projection. And we will just see. We will know pretty quickly within the first week or two of the season how it is that we need to adjust our assumptions, our rankings, our projections. Right now, I'm still going to be in the camp of Aaron Jones is going to see a healthy amount of work because that's what he has seen for the past 7 years.
Yeah, he's a veteran. He knows the system, and we care about September. His September, to me, feels pretty safe for Aaron Jones. Long-term, as the months go by, I think he may yield to Mason due to injury, age, or just Mason being really, really good. All right, producer Matt LaMarca, we've had 5 guys. Can't be a tie. Who do you have winning the Agree to Disagree episode of CHOP, the Guillotine Leagues podcast?
What a surprise. What a surprise.
Funny. What a
Who could have predicted this? Who could have predicted that the guy who invented Guillotine Leagues would win a Guillotine Leagues player debate?
If you want to win every week, just like I did this week, keep your lineup on point with the Go Puff Draft Champion at Fantasy Life. And keep your snack stash stocked with the Go Puff app. Beer, snacks, groceries delivered in as fast as 15 minutes. Freedman, let's say you're in the middle of a live draft, 1 minute picks. You run out of a critical item. You can't leave and come back for that critical item. 15 minutes later, there's a knock on your door. And Freedman, here's a full package of adult diapers. Boom. You are not leaving the couch, my man. And you can get 60% off your first order at GoPuff when you use the promo code FANTASYLIFE60. FANTASYLIFE60, all one word, no spaces, FANTASYLIFE60 at GoPuff with the GoPuff app or GoPuff.com. Great job today, Freedman. Nobody can complain that we agree with each other all the time anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I might be one of the most disagreeable people in the company. I wouldn't say the planet or the industry. I wouldn't go that far, but certainly the company. So anytime we want to have a disagreement, invite me on the show.
That is a guarantee. Maybe even next week we'll do this again. Thank you, my man. And thank you for watching Chop the Guillotine League podcast. We will be back next week, Tuesday, for more hot chopping action. Talk to you then, everybody. Bye-bye.